And just a quick reminder, folks, all of your lines are currently muted. But if you do have any questions for Gerald and I regarding anything to do with the Oracle database, feel free to ask those questions via the chat. You can either send it privately directly to Gerald or I, or you can post it to everybody via the chat, which if you haven't been using Zoom before, if you just look at, move your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, the chat is the little bubble or cloud icon at the bottom of the screen. Click on that, it'll open a chat window on the left or right hand side of your screen, and you can type the questions there.
Right, and we are on top of the hour. Shall we start, Maria?
I think so, yeah, perfect.
Okay, time. So welcome everybody to yet another round of Ask Me Anything Oracle Database Office Hours. For those of you who have joined us the first time, quick introduction. We got with me Maria. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure, okay. I'm Maria Colgan. I'm one of the product managers for the Oracle database. You can follow me on Twitter at SQL Maria, or check out my blog or YouTube channel.
Perfect. And myself, I'm Gerald Venzl. I'm a senior principal product manager here as well in Oracle for database. Both of us are here in Redwood Shores. You can follow me on my blog, Gerald on IT, or follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active these days, and you can ping me questions there as well. And with that, I think we give it a go with some questions, Maria, right?
Yeah, so just a quick thing about questions. So you have an opportunity to submit questions before the session via the AskTOM website. But given that this is a discussion channel, we're not really going to solve any problems where I tried to start my listener and I got a TNS error. Those kind of questions are best directed to either Oracle support or the actual AskTOM website, where Connor, Chris, or myself will do a bit of background research on the issue for you and give you the answer. So in this session, we're going to stick to more discussion topics. And we did get some questions filed before the session, Gerald, on exactly that I'm hoping you'll be able to answer for us. So the first one was all about XE. So can you tell us what is Oracle XE and when is it going to become available?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, as Maria said, a question filed again. And for those of you who have been in the last AskTOM Office Hour, we have covered this briefly as well, but just for those who haven't. So XE, or Express Edition, is the free edition of Oracle Database. Currently, it's out there for 11GR2. There is a new XE version coming, XE 18C. There will be a new XE version coming with every future release of the Oracle database. So for 18C, 19C, 20C, and so forth, you will also get the all the single instance features included. So we have changed the model of XE where 11GR2 was aiming to have small install size, get it up and running quickly. But we removed a lot of functionality in order to do so, and we thought that fast forward 10 years later, almost 10 years later, maybe that's not the concern so much anymore. Back then the concern was about bandwidth, download speed, etc. from the internet. Now we're thinking that actually, or we have asked the community actually also various times on conferences, Twitter and so forth, and the huge majority is telling us, give us all the functionality that is in Oracle that makes Oracle the best database out there. Just give it to me for free. And this is what you will get with XE. You can essentially think of it as a resource-constrained enterprise edition single instance environment. So we will constrain the resources around it. It's doing it all by itself. You don't have to worry about it. This is similar to what we did with 11G and 10G, so that you can run it on laptops and so forth. But it will be fully free to use. The one caveat there as well is that it will have zero support. Again, this is something that we had also with the previous versions of XE. So you're welcome to use it to build any applications. You are welcome to also run it in, if you classify it as production, but be aware that my Oracle support will not give you any patch, will not answer any SR or anything like that. We do have a forum that you can get some help. So it's a community-driven support approach, but in no case is this a replacement for anything mission critical or serious production deployments. But big benefit, as said before, you can now finally play or develop against any of the Oracle database features for free as well. So that's exciting news. A lot of people like that. As to when is it coming, the concrete questions that we had from Daniel, I believe, it is planned to come about a month after the on-prem release. So I say after the Windows release. So usually the way how it works with the Oracle release model for on-premises is that you will get Linux and Solaris first, two preferred platforms, and then you will get Windows soon after. This could be the same time as we release Windows and Solaris. This could be up to a month later, depending. And then you will get XE after that. So currently we're looking into August, month of August for XE. You know, as usual caveat, this may slip by a month or two. You know, you cannot hold me accountable for saying Gerald said August, but we're getting close, and right now it all looks very, very good. First 5 minutes on XE, and you know, again, for people who have been on before, the last one we covered this in more detail. You can look at the recording as well. But actually, over to you, Maria. We had Chris Saxon as a guest speaker last time we did this, because you basically dumped me for more glory, I suppose. Maybe you would like to tell the audience what you have been up to lately.
Thanks, Gerald. I'm sure I didn't dump you, but yes, I was unavailable for the last office hours, and that was because I've been busy getting ready for the launch of course, the autonomous database. So at Open World last year, Larry Ellison talked about the fact that we are going to be developing, or are developing, an autonomous database, and it's a cloud based product, and it's actually a family of products that are going to be part of this autonomous database. The first member of the family is already out and in production. That was the Autonomous Data Warehouse that went production in March of this year. And what I've been busy with is the autonomous OLTP service, which is coming later this year. And so it's all about the self-driving, making sure that the system is able to not only provision but look after itself by doing all the standard database operations, so backing itself up, patching itself, all of that good stuff will be done automatically for you, leaving our customers freed up to focus on the important stuff, making sure that their applications are running smoothly, making sure their data models allow them to scale linearly and all that good stuff, because of course in the cloud, you're looking for all of that, the things that it offers you, like elasticity and scalability. So focused on all of that good stuff. And of course, for me, the most exciting part of that is all the machine learning stuff that's going in to do the self-tuning of the database. So lots of fun there, and people will be able to get a little bit more about that in the coming months in the run-up to Open World. So stay tuned if you're looking for more details on the autonomous OLTP service. It is coming, but just not yet.
So will you change your Twitter handle to Autonomous Maria from SQL Maria, or?
No plans yet. I think I'll stick with SQL Maria for a while. But maybe one day I'll be replaced by a chatbot. Who knows? And then autonomous Maria then. But speaking of making things easy and making things automatic, Gerald, any hope that we'd get a self-installing database anytime soon?
Yes, so we actually, maybe not quite self-installing, but a very simple version of installing an Oracle database. So with 18c, we will actually also have an RPM-based installation for Linux, where you can get an Oracle database up and running with as simple as 2 commands. So you install the RPM that will give you the binaries, and then you have an init script that will essentially spin up a database for you. If you never happen to know, never touched an Oracle database before, or don't know all the different tuning parameters that we have, there's a lot of config parameters that you can decide during install. You now do no longer have to worry about those. You can execute those 2 commands and you will get an Oracle database set up to the best practices for general purposes, we think. And besides that, so it's the 2 command step there, installing the binaries, as well as then the script to set up a database in itself. That also means that even if you do have specific templates or specific, some people call it gold images for how an Oracle database should be provisioned, you can still take advantage from the RPM install itself, which will just, again, lay out the binaries for you. And then you can set up one or many databases, as always, as you've done before. So this will make it a lot easier, I think, especially in an cloud-friendly environment, but also obviously Linux-friendly environment to just get going with Oracle database. I personally am very excited about that. I've been being the guinea pig for the RPM, so to speak, so I got the liberty or the opportunity to test it already since the last couple of weeks, and it will make the install a lot easier for people that don't necessarily know all the different config parameters or don't want to know. Just on a side note is that the Docker images, and we have covered Docker in the last one as well for a long time. So you can go back and listen to that recording if you like. But just on a side note, the Docker images have been very popular for exactly the same reason as well, to make it easy to spin up an Oracle database on your laptop or on your server somewhere. And we will continue to do so as well. So going forward, you will have Docker images for 18c and so forth. And no right or wrong there. So it's like if you just have a bare metal Linux machine, you're welcome to install via the RPM. You're welcome to install like you've always done it. The zip files are not going away either. You're welcome to spin up Docker containers as well. So all of that is up to you.
Awesome. I know I love my Docker image, thanks to you, Gerald. So that's how I like to do my development, but everybody's different and the environments they've got are always a little different. So
exactly, and it's all about choice, right? So there's no right or wrong, it's just what you want to do. And the RPM certainly in Linux has been missing for quite a while, I suppose, for completeness. So I'm very excited about that, as I said before.
So I have a question for you, Gerald. I noticed you're wearing an Oracle Code t-shirt today. Quite a nice one that I have not seen before. Woo!
Yeah, the
Very
second iteration. So that's basically how I'm gonna get my advertisement in there, right? Without it out
well, there. The reason I was asking is I have yet to have the opportunity to go to an Oracle Code event. Hint, hint. But I was curious, is there any news or excitement, anything coming from the Java community, any new announcements that have happened at the Oracle Code events that you could share with us today?
You mean as in new releases or things? There's a bunch of stuff happening with Oracle Code, and maybe I cover all of them quickly. And just before I do so, I would like to remind everybody, also for those folks who have just joined, feel free to ask questions in the chat in Zoom. Feel free to ask them live if you are brave enough to do so. We had one chap last time who actually jumped on the mic and the video and asked the question live. But feel free to fill with questions that we can answer. About Oracle Code, well, so there's a couple of nice, exciting stories, and some of you may or may not have already seen Oracle Code. It's essentially, we have started with a free developer-focused day on Oracle technologies around the world. So we started this all last year with 21 cities, went around the world. It was a free one-day event. You had 18 sessions. This year we ramped it up a bit more. We went to 24 sessions, again, free one-day event. We have London coming up just next week on Wednesday. We're actually about to wrap it up. There's 3 more coming after London. And it has actually been very interesting from both sides. So although we want to reach out to developers essentially using Oracle technologies and show them what we can do and show them how actually you can build a solution with our technologies, which is the most important part. I've been to Poland just the other week ago for Oracle Code Warsaw, and I actually ran into 2 chaps that were DBAs or are DBAs out there, and they were like, oh yeah, we are DBAs, so hope you don't mind coming to Oracle Code. It's like, no, I don't really mind. Why would I? But they were like, those events are actually really helpful for us as well, because they help us learn and understand a bit more what our developers actually want from us. So although they were DBAs and they sort of, when I spoke to them over lunch, sort of thought they might be wrong in a place, they were absolutely not. So it's a great opportunity for anybody to come along, right, and kind of bridge this gap between developers and administrations, DBAs, and so forth. As to the announcements that have happened over the last series of Oracle Code events, we have released a couple of cool new products in the Oracle ecosystem altogether. The Java 9 went finally out, so Java is basically also moving to a 6-month release cycle, just like the database is moving to a 1-year release cycle. And I asked Maria later to just briefly explain that for folks on this office hour. And we also had GraalVM launching, which is yet another Java utility, or Java JVM, you can think about it. But that is somewhat exciting because that's the technology that we also right now are working on for our multilingual engine support, which essentially allows you to write stored procedures in any language. We start with JavaScript first, so there's a beta out there on the web where you can start writing JavaScript stored procedures. So that was very exciting. Many more announcements to come actually next week planned at London, so stay tuned for that. And I think the biggest thing that happened and that got a lot of people excited is that we broadened up Java 1. So during Open World, we also always ran Java 1 along with it, and there were some frustrations in the past that you needed to, if you had an Open World ticket, you needed to get a ticket for Java 1. If you had a Java 1 ticket, you needed a ticket to Open World. And it was always sort of this little gap between Java 1 is sort of the developer conference, but it's only really Java, and yet you have a developer track at Open World, and those two were, the one was in Moscone, the other one was in hotels, and you had to run around and stuff. What we have actually done with Java 1 is altogether is we have broadened it up to a bigger developer conference. We call it Oracle Code 1. So you will get everything from Java 1, but many, many more things. And one of them is actually that we have a dedicated track for databases, or as I call it, data management. So database, but also big data environments and so forth, that I'm very happy about as well. So, you know, people can actually go there, and again, like developers can actually see what they can do, what solutions they can build with Oracle technology, such as Oracle Database or offerings in our big data ecosystem. But also, we made this fee go away that you can, if you have an Open World ticket, you can go to Code 1. If you have a Code 1 ticket, I think you can go to Open World. And the biggest news is also, I suppose, from a logistics point of view, it's all hosted in Moscone West. So it's literally now just a matter of going up or down the floor and just walking into the session. So I think for both folks, the Open World participants as well as the Java 1, the original Java 1 participants, it's a win, as in that they can just go into any technical session that they would like to. For folks out there on this office hour here, if you are happy or lucky enough to go to Open World this year, you know, watch out for Code 1, or put in even a paper if you like.
Actually, Gerald, when is the call for papers closing for Code 1?
Yeah. You know, as I just said,
for Open World.
Yeah, actually, as I just said, put in a paper. I think we just closed it last week. So maybe we cannot put in a paper anymore this year, but maybe next year.
Fair enough.
And we will also have, we also got a approval for another series of Oracle Code events around the world. So that's probably, timeline is not fixed at all, but it will be after Open World. So watch out for that as well. Feel free to put in papers there or just attend there as well. So I think that has given us a very nice, fresh touch on it. Everybody that I've met so far during the events of those code series have been very positively surprised, very eager, engaging, excited about what happened there.
Great. So folks, as Gerald said before we started chatting about code, you can ask any question you have on the Oracle database through the chat session, or if you want to ask it live on air, you can do that too. Just pop a note into the chat and we'll make sure we can unmute you and allow you to ask your question live if you'd rather do that. So go ahead, Gerald.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the Oracle database new release model, just to give us a brief cap there. I know that we have had quite some air coverage on that, but there are still people out there that either don't know what's happening or are a bit confused by the new release model. Can you just briefly tell us what's going to change with 18C and why we call it 18? Is it really because we hate the number 13 so much?
Well, let's put it this way. Calling it 18 certainly got us out of having to deal with some unlucky numbers around the world like 13 and 17 and stuff. But yes, as Gerald said, we have a new release model for the Oracle database. We have gone to an annual release now, which we're very excited about because it gives us an opportunity to get new features out much faster to the community than we were able to do it in the past. In the past, we would do a major release every 3 to 5 years, which meant that we might be talking about new technology, but folks didn't have access to it for quite some time. So now we'll have an annual release, which is great. Just as before, it'll be on the available on the cloud and our engineered systems first, and then available on premise after that, which is where we are kind of now in the 18C cycle. So it came out earlier this year on cloud and on engineered systems. We've had our first patch set to that. We're now calling the patch sets release updates, or RUs. They're going to be done on a quarterly basis, just as they were before. We've had our first RU, and the second RU will actually come in July, and hopefully we'll start to see the release of the software on premises then as well. So with that with our second RU. Now, for each of those RU or release updates, we're actually going to also develop release update revisions, or RURs. And an RUR basically takes the previous release updates, fixes any regressions that may have appeared in that update, and adds any new security fixes that we may have. Nothing else new is added to those. So you have an opportunity, if you're not willing to apply the latest patch because you don't feel you've had enough time to test it, you can download the latest RU onto test environments, make sure it looks good there, and then take the RUR version of that a quarter later to put on your production system. So we have hopefully simplified the patching. We used to have lots of different options, whether you wanted a CPU or a PSU or a proactive bundle patch. All of that is gone. We're going to stick on a kind of a single train of patching for these new annual releases. And as Gerald said, the first one is called 18, and 18 really represents the year that it's been released. So the next version that we'll have will be 19C, that we'll see early next year. And they'll go on like that, 19, 20, and so on, just as they did before. Now, if you're worried, oh my God, I haven't even gotten to 12C, and now she's talking about 18C, what am I going to do? Don't panic. 18C really is 12.202. We rebranded it and put it out. So if you haven't moved to the 12C family yet and you were waiting for 12.202, well, here it is. It's 18C. So if that's something you're looking to move towards, that may be something that you're after. 19C is probably going to be the last of the 12.2 family, which is coming out next year as well. So that answer your question, Gerald? Or?
Absolutely. Obviously, I have tons of follow-up questions now. No, I think, could you just briefly also tell the audience what that means as to new features when they get released? So in the old way of the release model, I think we said the .1 release gets new functionality, the .2 focuses more on stability. How is this going to work with the new release model? Why is it better than what we had before?
No, a very good idea. So in the new release model, the new features will come in those in the yearly releases. So 18C, the new features that went in, showed up in the cloud and on our engineered systems back in January. What's happening in these release updates, of course, are any bug fixes, security fixes, and very small tweaks or enhancements to those new features. But there won't be new features in the quarterly releases per se, not big features anyway. Because we're doing it annually, the number of new features will actually be reduced within each yearly release, which will actually make it easier, I think, for folks to adopt. There won't be such a vast majority of things that you've got to test before you feel comfortable putting this new release into production. So because it's coming annually, we don't have developers trying to shove all of any great thing they were working on into that release, because it'll be 3 years before the next one comes. Now what we'll do is, if you're ready, great, you can go in the new release. If you're not ready, the next train isn't so far away. It's coming a year later, and we can put out your new feature from a developer's point of view in that next release. So think of them as kind of smaller, more manageable releases, but coming at a much greater frequency of an annual basis, which will make things, I think, easier for folks to adopt, because hopefully they won't need such a large amount of time to test the new software before they feel comfortable putting it into production.
Right, so that also means easier and cheaper upgrades, as you don't get a big shebang of 500 new features once every 5 years or so?
Ideally, yes. So what I'd like to see is that folks would adopt new releases more frequently than they would have before, and mainly because the pain, as you said, or the work required to adopt a new release will be simpler and hopefully much more time efficient than before.
And of course, for those customers out there that want to avoid the pain of upgrades altogether, they would go to one of our autonomous cloud services, ideally, where we will do everything for them.
Yes, exactly. Well done, Gerald. My God, it's as if you used to be in sales. That's true. The autonomous database is going to, which is a managed cloud service, is going to do all of that for you. So it will take the quarterly updates. They'll be automatically applied. So you'll always have the latest security fixes, but it'll also do the upgrades as well. So we'll take care of all of that automatically for you.
So the audience can see that Marie obviously bribed me before this to mention autonomous, given her new role or involvement in the new services. That's all great. Well, thanks for that. I think that should clarify things about the new release model and so forth. For folks out there that thought that we were just going to 18 because we wanted to avoid the number 13, I always point out that Oracle Enterprise Manager actually did go to 13. So we weren't too concerned about that, but it's a fun rumor to go around the world. Oh, you wanted to avoid unlucky number 13. Not quite true, but yeah. Right, so perhaps, so we covered one question already around XE before. Let me just see whether we got questions that came in the meantime while we were going on. I know that, as Maria said before, some of the submitted questions are the typical, what I classify the Ask Tom posted questions. You know, I have query 8, run slow, etc. We're not going to tackle this within that hour because most of those questions need a follow-up and, you know, probably drill down a bit deeper, which if the person asking the question is not on, is very difficult as well. For those questions, I would like or would recommend the audience, as Maria said before, either go to Oracle support or, you know, just post the question on the actual Ask Tom forum. This office hour is much more about, hey, I have a question that I always wanted to ask Oracle that I couldn't find anywhere, or, you know, that's just a burning question that came up or whatever. You can ask those here, you know, also if they are not so technical questions like where's database going in general and so forth. I have a couple of, so I'm scanning through and I don't really see anything. You see exciting here other than the XE. Oh yeah, sorry, there was one more question actually also in the general release of the 18C Windows port. I think I covered that briefly before. So you will have the on-prem releases scheduled for the 18.3 RU3 version, which will be out in July. And I think that's the month that we plan on the on-prem release in general. And then, of course, as said before, so we always get Linux and Solaris first, and then Windows is closely to follow. It may be at the very same day, maybe a day or a week or a month later, but usually not longer than a month later that you have Windows there as well. And then you will have XE, and also there, just for completeness, XE will continue to release for Linux and Windows, and for Linux and Windows only. So those were the ports we had before. Sometimes we get questions around Mac port for XE. I think we can these days easily get around this with, like, if you want to run Oracle database on Mac, you can happily do so on a Docker container like Maria and I do. We both have Macs and it has suited us quite well. There's no plan for a Mac port for Oracle database XE anytime soon. Okay. Maria, I have 2 more announcements to make or 2 things that have come up, not necessarily in this forum, but questions that have come up. So one thing that is also brand new is we have an ORD, so an Oracle REST Data Services Docker image out there on GitHub as well now. So for those of you who haven't come across ORDs yet, it's basically part of the sort of SQL developer family. Certainly the developers that give you SQL developers, SQL CL give you ORDs as well. And the idea here is to be able to REST enable your Oracle database, whether that's for data access in itself, or that is for administrative tasks. So things like fire off a REST call to create a user, or fire off a REST call to query some data from a table and so forth. Ships with the Oracle database, but it also, so you get it as part of the Oracle database install, but also as a quarterly release cycle. So, you know, if you download 18C once it's available on-prem in, say, July, you get the latest and greatest ORDs with it. 3 months later, you can download another newer version of it. To make also that deployment easier, a lot of people have asked there again for a Docker environment. So we have done the same thing as with database. We have put it out there on GitHub today, so you can run your ORDs in Docker, make it talk to one or many databases, regardless whether they are in Docker or on-prem, does not matter, on bare metal, I should say, does not matter. It just connects to database wherever that happens to be, cloud, bare metal, Docker, and so forth. And you will get a Docker image on the container registry and Docker store of it very, very soon. So we're going through the process there to package it all up, and then you can just pull it down and REST enable your database. That is something that becomes more and more interesting for people out there. So if you are one of those people saying, well, why REST? How does this work with database and so forth? Just in general, the orchestration layers today, as you know, many customers, or maybe you don't know, many customers manage thousands of Oracle databases in their data centers across the world. Having to log on to each one of those to just create a user or something is a very tedious manual task. And of course, a lot of people and smart DBAs have gotten around this via writing shell scripts or other stuff. ORDS is kind of the next iteration to that, where you can just fire off a REST call and ORDS will do it for you. And the reason why REST is just because more and more of those orchestration tools or layers speak REST by default, so it makes it very easy to embed rather than having to call a shell script on a server somewhere and so forth. So that's very exciting there. Another thing that we are currently having in prototype status or beta status is the asynchronous JDBC driver. So Node.js, so the JavaScript environment, has become more and more popular of its way of how to interact with resources. Those resources could be an Oracle database or could be a database. And the way how Node.js does that is in an asynchronous fashion. So it will fire off a query to the database. And rather than being stuck there and wait there, it will actually carry on with it's processing whatever other code you have. And then you have a concept of a callback where once the query is finished, it will return in an asynchronous thread and a different thread. It will essentially then execute the parsing of the data and so forth. And you can literally think of it like that. When you think of a website, what you want to avoid when you hit the refresh button of a website or you go to a website, you want to avoid where it kind of the website builds up and then it's stuck there, and that's there where a database query is running, and then the database query returns after 5 seconds and it continues there to pop up, and then it goes further down and it's stuck there again, another database query executes. You will see with modern web pages what you normally, or if you watch out for it, you will see that they will render completely on refresh very quickly. And then after the fact, you will see a table pop up or an image pop up or something like that. And those are these asynchronous calls coming back. It says something saying, you know, I don't need to wait for the query to finish rendering my page. I want the page up. And once the query is finished, like with recommendations or something, it will just, because it's all JavaScript, pop up there in the middle dynamically, and it makes pages look very slick and stuff like that. So people, a lot of web developers have gotten to love that asynchronous nature and not having to worry about things like that. And so naturally this Node.js web development, or JavaScript fanboy, if we want to say so, has moved over to the Java land as well. All right, people have written web pages using Java technologies for a long time as well. And they were saying, hey, we want the same asynchronous fashion. So this is right now in beta. If you want to try it out, you know, feel free. So it's on our GitHub. Just search for asynchronous JDBC or something like that. You should find it in our examples directory of the Oracle database examples. And you can give it a go and also interact with the developers out there. Now, the other thing that I always point out is like, asynchronous is great for some use cases. It's not a fit for other use cases, right? So like my ATM withdrawal or send Maria money for, actually she sends me money for the bribe before for autonomous. They should not happen asynchronously, right? Because you want to make sure that the money got transferred. And of course, there's various more different use cases for synchronous transactions or calls to databases. And again, no right or wrong, no everything asynchronous or everything is synchronous, but just, depending on the use cases. Some of the times you can quite happily wait for something to come back because it's not critical. Sometimes you want it all synchronous and in order because it's Maria's bribe coming over to my bank account for autonomous. Don't want that getting lost in the way.
Awesome. Thanks for those, Gerald. Actually, both very exciting. The last one there, it reminds me a lot of the approximate functions, right?
Yes.
Inside in the database, similar to that. They are very, very useful in certain use cases, but don't close your end of month books using the approximate count or the approximate percentile, right? It's
actually, for the sake of the attendees, for those who haven't come across the approximate, can you just briefly cover those?
Oh, yeah, sure. So what we actually introduced as part of the 12C family of the Oracle database is the approximate functions. These are analytic style functions, so things like count distinct, percentile, median, things where we often are operating on a really large data set, but we don't always need an exact response. So going back to your website example, Gerald, if I'm trying to just keep track of the number of people that have visited my website or clicked on a particular link on my website, I don't need to see every single visitor and go through all of those logs. I'm just looking for an approximate number of visitors. And so these new approximate functions do something very similar to how we actually gather statistics inside of the database. So they're using a new hash-based algorithm rather than going through sorting the data and doing an exact count. They use this hash-based algorithm that gives us back the results in a much more efficient manner, even though the volume of data is huge. And we do that by, as I said, using a hash-based algorithm. It resides completely in memory, so you never spill to temp regardless of the size of the data set. So that's where the big speed up comes from. We will scan through all of the data set, but we won't do any spilling to disk to do those calculations, whether it's a count distinct or a percentile or a median, as I said. And what's really nice is you don't actually have to change your code. You can set a logon trigger or an alter session to transform the existing functions that you've got in your code, so count distincts or medians or percentiles, into approximate. That basically we'll rewrite the queries automatically for you when they come in from that particular session to use these new algorithms. They'll give you an approximate result. So it may not be 100%. So if the data set is really small, less than 16,000 distinct values, you'll actually get the right answer. But if it's a larger data set, which is typically when these are done, then the way the algorithm works, there will be a small percentage error in the result, but you'll get the results much, much faster. That's why we say definitely don't set this parameter at a system level, especially if you do actual financial reporting or anything business or mission critical on this system. But if you've got a bunch of data scientists or you've got some analytics, or even if you're doing a soft close, in other words, you are closing the books, but you're doing a soft close just to get an idea, a thumb in the air of where we're at, then you could potentially use the approximate calculations for those, just as you get a sense of what's going on the system. But yeah, please don't set those parameters at the system level because you may not quite get the result you're expecting. But the approximate, they're amazing. They're so much faster and fantastic for analytics or data scientists.
Great, thank you. And I think they all are called approx or something, so you can easily find those functions like approx count or something. Approx.
Yeah, so approx count distinct, approx percentile, approx median. And with each new release of the database, we're adding more of those. So you will start to see a bigger family for those. But as you said, Gerald, if you look in the SQL guide or simply just Google for Oracle database approx, they'll all pop up and you'll get the full list of what we're offering.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's certainly exciting. I like the fact how you pointed out that up to 16,000 it is accurate and then it builds. So I'm sure there will be one or the other one now trying this out and see whether you actually true with 16,000.
I love the way you continue to highlight that, just in case anybody missed it, Gerald.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be held
60,767.
very
Anyway,
approximate of you.
yeah. There is one question popping up. When is the non-CDB environment or non-CDB architecture being de-supported, being gone from the Oracle database? So that's actually also an interesting one, because we do still have a lot of people out there on 11.2 and a lot of people somewhat scared away from the CDB architecture. So a couple of things there. I believe the current plan, Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, is to de-support the non-CDB environment with 20C. And maybe 21, 22 or something like that, but it's planned to be de-supported soon. You will only have a CDB architecture left. In the very early days, people thought that we tried to force people into buying an option. So the CDB architecture is also tied to an option called multi-tenant. What that means is with a CDB architecture, you do get this concept of pluggable databases, where you have many pluggable databases within a container database, as CDB. So many database containers in a container database, if you like. And if you run more than one of a distinct type of PDB, you actually have to license the multi-tenant option. So people were very scared of, oh, that means, that we have to now, in order to go to 12C, not only do we have to have an EE license, but buy multi-tenant. That is not the case. If you happen to have only one PDB of a kind, there's 3 different PDBs. There's a regular PDB, there's a proxy PDB, there's an application root PDB. If you have only one of any kind, you actually get it for free. So if you upgrade from 11G, or even if you happen to be on 12.1 or 12.2, God forbid, you're still on the non-CDB architecture, you can upgrade to the CDB architecture with just one PDB in it. You don't have to pay any license. The licensing guide also makes this very clear on the documentation. And really the only thing that changes for you is, now that you have a PDB within a CDB, you don't really get any of the benefits of consolidation or anything like that. But you have to maybe remember, when you do a SQL plus / sysdba, that you do an alter session set container to the PDB to operate within that. But that's pretty much all of it, what you have to do to get onto a CDB architecture. So nothing else, everything else is transparent. There was one thing where you have to connect to a service to get into a PDB, so you can no longer, hence why SQL plus / sysdba, you might need a alter session set container to get inside the PDB, or you just use the service name to get into the PDB. People should use service names anyway since 20 years, but whenever we got them out, that's also something that still isn't there. People still use the SIDs quite happily, and then when you go into a rack environment or so forth, they find out that, well, SID and service is slightly different. Kind of coming back to what I'm trying to say. What did I try to say, Maria?
Well, let me say at least that all of the autonomous cloud services are all using PDBs. And so if you want to make the transition to that in the future, it'd be great to be on a multi-tenant or PDB architecture on premise to give you the ability to unplug and plug into the cloud going forward. So if you haven't thought about it before now, and you are thinking, well, I'm not doing autonomous immediately, but I may be moving in that direction when we transition towards the cloud, then it would be fantastic to get prepared by adopting the multi-tenant architecture on-prem. And as Gerald said, for no additional licensing fees, a single PDB in a single CDB is included as part of your EE license. So you really don't need anything special. That.
And you don't have to rewrite your apps either, so everything is compatible. As said, if you are a DBA and you haven't looked at it yet, if you have a single PDB CDB environment, nothing changes that much. As said, you might want to know this one alter session command to get in and out the PDB. The other thing I wanted to point out, there is actually some benefits that you do get even with a single PDB CDB environment when it comes to patching or upgrades. So for example, what you can do then is, if you happen to be on 12.2, 12.201 already on a single PDB CDB environment, and you are going to 18C, you could, for example, as an upgrade mechanism, just install a plain vanilla 18C CDB And then you have this ability to unplug and plug the PDB over from the 12.2 environment to the 18C environment. So you sort of have a decoupled process there where you installed 18C binaries and everything. And then as you plug in this PDB, we only do the upgrade of the data dictionary of the PDB. So system data dictionary and all this stuff is already part of the plain vanilla 18C CDB install. You don't have to worry about that, and you don't waste time on during the upgrade by doing so. You can also do clone that PDB over. So not only do you unplug and plug, but you can clone PDBs to a remote CDB. And again, there you could, for example, say, hey, we want to upgrade to 18C, stand up a plain vanilla CDB environment, and then just clone my production PDB over to 18C without removing anything production, just to test it, to figure out what's going on, whether everything works fine. I do my regression tests for the upgrade and so forth. And then once you are confident that this worked, you can drop the clone and then do an unplug plug, for example, or with relocate. There's a lot of different features and functionalities that you can use to get this agility of moving from one version to another one. Same is true for patching. So there even more so. If you have a PSU coming, or in the future an RUR, same thing applies. You could just install that patched CDB, a new CDP with the patch in place, and then just unplug and plug the PDB over. So it kind of gives you this decoupling and confidence that you don't if you don't necessarily want to do this all in place, but somewhat in a step approach. And again, it's all included in your EE license. Sooner or later, you will have to move. I reiterate this one more time. So it's the non-CDB architecture will be de-supported sooner than later. I know that we have a lot of features in the database that are de-supported for quite a while, but with the non-CDB architecture, we want to move rather fast to de-support the old functionality. And the reason for that is solely that because it was such a big change in the database kernel of introducing a CDB environment, as in for our development efforts, we decided to fork the code baseline. And right now we're running two code bases for Oracle, one for non-CDB, one for CDB, and of course we want to get back down to one code base. So that's the reason why we want to get the non-CDB environment de-supported. Gist of it is adopted sooner than later. You will be forced at some point. It's really not that scary. We have plenty of production use cases out there. As Maria said as well, all our cloud instances are running in CDB environments only. It's actually getting to the stage where if you go CDB environment, you can assure that somebody else has tested or run into things already for you, mainly on we ourselves on running it on our Oracle Cloud. It's one of the benefits of running a cloud. We will find a lot of things ourselves before it even goes out there onto on-prem and so forth.
All right, so one more question for you, Gerald. I know we've made you do all the talking this morning, but is Oracle Database 12c certified on Docker?
That's a very good question as well. So as of today, Oracle Database 12c single instance only is supported on Docker. It's not yet certified. So the difference between supported and certified means supported is really the important one, which means you can open an SR, you do get a patch, you do a bug fix, etc. Once you open an SR. Certification means that we specify a very specific set of different, very specific set of versions of the different software components. So where we say we have tested Oracle Linux 7, UEK4, kernel version, whatever, on Docker, whatever, Oracle 12.201, PSU, whatever, perhaps, and we certify this as, yes, we have run the tests against that version, that exact version. People like to have this certification where, hey, just tell me, which version do I have to install that I know that everything works, you've tested it through. We understand that. The reason why we haven't done it for Docker just yet is because Docker was very fast moving in the past and it's now getting more to a stable environment. Still has 3 months release cycle, so we're not going to certify on each of those either, but at least before the Docker CE split happened and stuff like that, Docker, the technology itself was rapidly moving, a lot of functionality added and so forth. So we are now feeling comfortable that now is a good time to certify on a given version. We are planning to do so actually going forward for 18C most likely, because we're so close, because 18C is out on the cloud and so close to your on-prem release as well. Perhaps not on 12C anymore. As to certification there as well, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to run exactly that version. Again, it's just the most important thing is it is supported. So we run through our tests. We have seen no issues. We think that this is all fine, and therefore we offer support. While certify only means, okay, here's one set where we run through all the tests and then say this is the configuration we've run through it. Just like with PSUs and stuff like that, we don't necessarily think that a tiny bug fix, change, whatever in Docker will cause everything to break. So, you know, we'll probably do the certification in a longer stretch than every 3 months, certainly not every 3 months. I think there's the follow-up then is Oracle on Docker, a stable environment for QA development. Depends what you mean by stable, frankly. So it's a viable environment for development for sure. You have all the functionalities available and so forth. Again, single instance that is. We do have rack images out as well on GitHub today, so you can also run rack on Docker today if you want to do some development work there as well. That's not yet supported. However, on the QA part, I'm saying, well, it depends what you mean by stable environment. Yes, you can. So there's nothing really that would stop you from doing QA. Again, all functionality works there. However, when it comes to performance, we have seen some folks that, you know, Docker and containers, Linux containers in general, they work a little bit different as you would have on VMs and so forth. So, you know, if you don't know Docker that inside out or that well, I would not necessarily do performance tests on it because, you know, you share resources still with everybody else. So the way how Docker, for example, gives you CPUs is not like a VM where you say, okay, I allocate 2 CPUs for you. Or if you have anything hard partitioning where you literally say, you know, those set of CPUs are now for that VM and nobody else will ever run on it, but it actually uses the OS scheduler to do so. So if you have a 24 CPU machine and you say in Docker, hey, I only give you 5 CPUs, then the OS scheduler will essentially schedule you to an equivalent of what would be 5 CPUs. Now with scheduler in general and the OS, you know, that depends on a lot of the other things that are running there. So it wouldn't be the first time, or we certainly had the cases in the past where people were like, oh, this is all running really, really slow. Well, you're running 30 other containers on it. You didn't resource constrain anybody. You basically, you would do the same thing as running a database and 30 other applications on the same host. What are you going to expect, right? So be careful with that. Know what you're doing. I guess that's always the mantra, right? Just be sure that you know what you're doing, whether you use a prox count functions or running it in Docker. But for development, I mean, it's popping up more frankly, for good reasons, right? So spinning up a database on your laptop to do development on Docker. Maria and I do it as well to highlight and show functionality. That's all fine. That's all good. And if you happen to run into an environment, into an error or something, a bug, then, you know, you're supported there as well.
No, I give it 2 thumbs up. I'm very happy with my Docker. I love the fact it's on my laptop and it gives me a mobile development environment. So from that perspective, I think it's fantastic. And because it's exactly the same code that I'm running there, that I'm also running in the cloud, that when I'm trying to transition my demos that I've written on the plane, you know, when I get to a conference, then I'm transitioning those demos to my cloud environment because it's the exact same software on my Docker as it is in the cloud. It's perfectly transportable, and so it is a great development environment, in my humble opinion.
And there again, I just plug in the nice thing about PDBs again. So the images that you get for Docker or the build files, they all give you CDB environments only for the same reasons we have said before, right? It's like it's time to move off the old non-CDB architecture. But even there, so you have the nice benefit you get out of that without me personally thinking about it too much to begin with when we build those Docker things is you can develop happily on your laptop. It's all in a PDB. You can unplug the PDB from your laptop and plug it in anywhere else you like. So whether that's your UAT environment in the corporation, whether it's your cloud environment or anything else. So there's again a very nice kind of pitch for the CDB architecture, which is free of charge if you use only one PDB.
And while we're pitching, can I also say that I use SQL CL to connect to my Docker?
Sure.
Do you want to spend a second just telling the folks what SQL CL is, Gerald, before we wrap up?
Yeah, so SQL CL, it's like, it's this love or hate thing, I think, out there. So Maria and I are both big fans. SQL CL, short for SQL Command Line, is an alternative to SQL Plus. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just what people prefer. I say it's this love-hate thing because core SQL Plus users that actually know all the commands that you can do with SQL Plus and so forth kind of stick to SQL Plus, and there's nothing wrong with that. SQL Plus is a great tool, still actively developed as well. I certainly don't know many of the commands in SQL Plus. I'm frankly too young for it. But what always sort of annoyed me a bit with SQL Plus was that I didn't have the command history, although this did come with the last version as well. SQL CL is a different touch on it. It's again from the SQL developer folks. They have taken the core runtime of SQL Developer, the pieces, the engine that executes a SQL statement and so forth, and have given it to you as a command line interface as well. And you have nice things like command history, command completion as well. Tab works nicely if you have dbms_JSON .tab. It will actually list you all the nice functions and so forth that you have in the package, or table names and so forth. And it also allows you for a little bit more customization. So it's a Java-based tool, so happily comes with or without JVM if you like. So I mean, Java is pretty much on every system anyway, so you just download it and spin it up. And because of that, you have some nice little gadgets that you can play around with. So for example, you can write some SQL CL specific scripts and JavaScript if you like. So if you would like to, have just some custom commands in your SQL CL, you can write those easily in some JavaScript or Java source files, I believe, and plug them in. It does Unicode as well. So the development manager, Chris Rice, is always very happy, and I think Jeff Smith as well, to have in their prompts some beers, some beer emojis rather than, SQL arrow and so forth, and you can come up with anything you like. But it's just a nicer touch and feel to it, my personal experience. So I'm a big fan of SQL CL. Again,
we did get a follow-up question, Gerald.
Sure.
Do we know if SQL CL will be included in the Oracle Home going forward?
Yes, should be. I'm actually thinking whether it not already is on 18C, but it will be included, as far as I know, in the Oracle Home and the Oracle install as well, so that you have it there, just like, SQL developers sort of in the Oracle Home as well, for give or take. So sometimes you wonder why you want to do that, or some people may wonder why you want to do that, but, again, different use cases. So some people are not allowed to install additional software on the machines and so forth, but as it ships with the Oracle Home in itself, you can use anything that's in there because, they trust what we ship as Oracle is secure and everything. So you will still have SQL Developer or SQL CL in the Oracle Home as well.
Okay.
Again, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there because we've got one more and we're running rapidly out of time. And as the official timekeeper, I want to make sure we can answer one more. How is Docker used on a Windows laptop? Does it require a Linux VM to be running?
No, not necessarily. So Windows does have support for Docker now. I think it's called Windows Container. I'm not the best expert on Windows because I don't have Windows. I have a Mac. But as far as I know, Windows does have native support for Docker. It may use as a similar trick like on Mac. When you run Docker on Mac, you actually boot up a Linux VM, but they hide all the fact for you. The other thing I would like to always add there, though, is that we have seen some issues with Windows Docker database images as to permission issues and so forth. They are sort of hard for me to debug because I don't have a Windows machine, and we also do not support running Oracle database on Docker on Windows. So that's for Oracle Linux 7, UEK4, Unbreakable Enterprise Kernel 4, and Red Hat Linux 7 only. But it should be possible. So certainly people have used it and are using it out there, what I can tell from GitHub. Some of the issues that have come up, that doesn't mean it's a showstopper or anything. And certainly, give it a go if you have a Windows machine. Windows does support Docker, and we basically rely on Microsoft to provide a good Docker port for Windows. So there's another question that just came in. Sorry, Maria, you want to read it?
One of the benefits of cloud is that you can get more CPUs if you need more processing power. Is there any enhancements on Oracle database on cloud to do something like that? And I know with the autonomous database cloud, there is that ability. You can also get it, I believe, on our the Exadata database cloud service as well. You can do the elasticity, the scaling by adding more CPUs to the environment on demand. So I know you can certainly get it in the autonomous and in the Exadata cloud services today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think anywhere where you have hourly or based pricing or metered, as we call it, meter pricing, you have this capability of basically spinning up more CPUs and then tearing them down again. I think you have to use it for a certain amount of time before you can tear them down again. And also we do have this cloud bursting capability on Exadata's in-house, I believe, so where you can actually burst into the cloud. So if you have an environment in-house and you need more processing power, you can burst into the cloud for a period of time and then go out again. And again, this is something like end of month processing is a typical use case for that. It's like, yeah, everything's fine throughout the month. Now we need some extra horsepower. And rather than getting more kit into my data center, I use actually the Oracle Cloud to do so. Or if you happen to run everything in the Oracle Cloud, you then just say, okay, now I need more horsepower.
And that takes us to the top of the hour. Gerald, thank you so much. That was an awesome office hours. You answered everything great. Hopefully folks can join us next month when we do this all over again.
Right.
But for now, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and have a good day, the rest of the evening or morning. Thank you.